Well, as we showed you earlier, President Biden made an unannounced trip to Ukraine today, his first since the Russian invasion.
It comes at a critical moment in the war against Russia.
The one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is this Friday. Dr. Yoshiko Herrera is a professor of political science at UW-Madison and an expert on politics in Russia. Welcome back to Live at 4.
Hi, Yoshiko. Good to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
What do you make of the president's visit today?
Well, it's an important show of support of the United States for Ukraine. I think that's the primary message, and that the fact that he is a president visiting a country at war where American troops are not stationed makes it very dangerous, and I think that underscores the significance of the visit.
Yeah, it was startling to see the president and hear the air raid sirens in the background, him being in a war zone. You know, we're coming up on the one-year anniversary of the start of the Russian invasion. And this story is not always on the front page anymore. It hasn't been leading our newscasts in a while. What is the status of the conflict right now? Is it possible to see who has the advantage in this war?
Well, there are some interesting developments in the last year. One is that both armies are very changed since where they were a year ago. You might call it, some people might say that there is a stalemate going on, but it's actually very active fighting right now, a lot of casualties, and there's still a front of over 600 kilometers. So there's quite active fighting, although at the moment it doesn't look like either side really has the capacity to defeat the other side, but both sides are very committed to fighting. Russia still has an advantage with manpower to some extent, but they've lost a lot of officers, junior officers. They've lost a lot of equipment, and they appear to be running out of munitions. Ukraine, on the other hand, started out with a much smaller military, but they've received a lot of assistance from the West, and they're counting on that assistance to continue their struggle.
When Russia first invaded, the thought was, well, this is going to be over in a month, Kyiv will fall, and none of that happened. The Ukrainian people stood up and fought back and are still fighting back.
Yeah, I think that the resolve has only strengthened in Ukraine, and in fact, the Russian attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure has only strengthened that resolve. So Ukrainians are absolutely committed to maintaining the sovereignty of their state, maintaining their nationhood. And so I don't see really any sign that Ukraine is going to unilaterally give up or surrender. They're going to continue to fight to maintain their statehood.
Is support in the United States for Ukraine as strong as it's always been, or is there evidence that it's softening a little bit as the war drags on?
There is evidence that there's a little bit of softening of support in the U.S. However, I think the context is that given the polarization in the United States and the disagreement between the two parties, there was kind of remarkable, almost historic consensus across party lines on support for Ukraine right after the invasion. And so the level of support is kind of unprecedented, not just in Congress, but even around towns in America, seeing Ukrainian flags and just general support for Ukraine is sort of was extremely high. So I think it's fair to say there is a weakening of that level of support, especially when people are asked about support in the context of economic trade-offs. But on the other hand, I don't think overall we would say there's a lack of support for Ukraine. I think the United States remains committed to Ukraine, and President Biden's visit today underscored that point. But at the same time, compared to the sort of historic highs that we saw last spring, it's a bit weaker than that.
But it's still there, which is good. Yoshiko, thanks for being with us today. Friday marks the one-year anniversary, and we'll have more on that on Friday.
We appreciate your time. Great to see you.
Thank you.